Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to begin our session. So I'm pleased to open the session, and I'll be also speaking later on. My name is Alex Wong with the ITU. I'm also one of the co-leads of the GIGA initiative. I'm noticing next door there's a session on digital money. They should be coming here because we're actually going to be using and exploring cryptocurrency and things like that for GIGA, but I'll let my colleague Chris talk about that in a moment. I just want to kick things off and turn directly to our opening remark. I have the pleasure to introduce Carla Haddad from UNICEF, who is the global head of private sector partnerships and fundraising. And she'll kick us off with an opening remark, and then we're going to go through our program and hopefully make this interactive and fireside chat style, and we're looking forward to a great discussion. Thank you, Carla.
So it's quite formal. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, esteemed delegates and loyal fellow partners. I want to echo what His Excellency President Alain Berset said as he opened this week's event. We are not on the right path to achieve the 2030 agenda. For 80% of the targets, progress has been limited, stagnated, or even regressed. One of the main reasons for this is the lack of financing, where both public and private funding are needed. As we speak, one of those missed targets centers around digital inclusion. 1/3 of humanity remains unconnected to the internet, along with the life-changing economic and social opportunities that come with it. Today, I stand before you representing GIGA, or the GIGA Initiative, or the Big GIGA, a global initiative by UNICEF and ITU, aiming to address the digital divide by connecting every single school in the world to the internet. GIGA's work in connecting schools exemplifies how public and private funding can serve the global public good. And we are honored to host this session about financing for universal school connectivity. Since its establishment in 2019, GIGA has helped governments connect schools to the internet, benefiting more than 8,000 schools and positively impacting more than 2.2 million students. This is made possible thanks to our public and private sector partners who have played a pivotal role in financing school connectivity. GIGA has helped unlock more than $1.7 billion in 8 countries to fund school connectivity, including over $85 million for El Salvador, $400 million for Kenya, and $600 million for Brazil. Coming from various sources such as grants, loans, universal service funds, and proceeds from government auctions, these funds are absolutely critical to connecting schools in the world's most remote and underserved areas. These accomplishments underscore the transformative power of partnerships that bridge the gap between the public and the private sectors. Our private sector partners are more than just financial donors. They are investors, and we insist on that, and they're co-development partners who bring invaluable expertise and contributions beyond financing per se. Take, for example, Ericsson, one of our first technology partners, which has provided expertise in connectivity and data analytics. Together, we have created an open source daily check app, which allows schools to transmit real-time data about their connectivity status, enabling governments to monitor the quality of internet service their schools get. Dell Technologies, for example, has also been instrumental in our mission, offering high-performance computing HPC services that accelerated our school mapping work. With their support, we have identified over 20,000 schools in Sudan, including 13,000 previously uncharted ones, using AI algorithms and satellite imagery. The global digital divide still affects 2.6 billion people, and we must connect 1 million people to the internet every single day to close this gap by 2030. The challenge is daunting and enormous, and Giga, some people call it Giga, which is even bigger, is accelerating its pace. We are proud to announce the launch of the Global Geneva Giga Connectivity Center with generous support from the Swiss government and a Swiss foundation, which includes the establishment of centers for finance, procurement, and a regulatory training academy here in Geneva proper. The center will begin work early next year. Next month, we will convene at the Rockefeller Estate in Italy to discuss a financing mechanism aimed at expediting the pace at which we connect schools to the internet. With all this momentum, I am excited to open today's session as we hear from thought leaders from the public and private sector, including James Mwangi, Chief Executive Officer of Equity Group Holdings, Jonas Pasquier, Head of Global Affairs from the Permanent Mission of Switzerland to the UN, Dr. Atalia Lesiba Molokome, Permanent Representative of Botswana to the UN and in Switzerland, Karen Wilson, Chair of the Supervisory Board of the Impact-Linked Finance Fund, among other things, and Ivan Ordaz-Romo, CEO and co-founder of COCO, an internet provider in Mexico. We'll also be joined by our Giga colleagues, and I know them personally and individually, and I've worked a lot with them, Alex Wong and Chris Fabian, and one of Giga's primary sponsors who will come later on, ITU Secretary General Doreen Bogdan-Martin, who is a loyal friend to UNICEF and a great champion for this Giga initiative. Today, we will talk about the challenges and opportunities to achieve long-term sustainability in financing telecommunication infrastructure. We will also hear about innovative financing solutions to achieve universal school connectivity, including perspectives in blended finance and impact investment through public-private partnerships. These ideas should inspire us to take action, to mobilize more resources towards school connectivity worldwide. We are extending this open invitation to all of you to join us on this exciting journey to bridge the digital divide in the world. I thank you and hope you enjoy the panel that will start. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to start with our video. So over to the colleagues. Okay, great. So before we turn to our panel, we wanted to give you a bit more of an overview of Giga. So I'm here up on stage with my colleague Chris. We're going to walk around a bit and try to be informal. It's for our fireside chat. We're going to take 5-6 minutes to give you a quick overview of how Giga works, and then we'll turn it to our panel. So you saw our video. This video is already a few months out of date, so the numbers are slightly higher. But the real exciting opportunity is now coming on how we think we can really scale to the next phase. So we're going to trade back and forth, use some slides as background. Of course, I think, well, we hope many of you are familiar that we still have 2.6 billion people that don't have connectivity to the internet. That means either no access or it's such a limited basis that it doesn't meet the demands of what are called meaningful connectivity. And in that, you have, of course, hundreds of millions of children as students, and many of those schools, therefore, that serve the children are not connected. So that's our problem statement. But like with everything here at Building Bridges, a challenge is an opportunity.
Thanks, Alex. I'm Chris. I co-lead Giga with Alex. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this project works and get into a few of the details because it's pretty exciting. This is a map of digital inequity in Panama. You can see schools that are connected in green. You can see schools that are disconnected in red. You can go on your phone to projectconnect.world, and you can see this website yourself. Projectconnect.world will show you the maps for about 40 countries. You can pick your favorite country, and you can see school connectivity. We think it's really important to present this picture. This data in many countries comes up near real time. So every 4 hours, the data in Brazil refreshes itself. And as Alex said, and as you heard in Carla's opening remarks, we've also mapped every school in Sudan. We mapped every school in Kazakhstan. We've worked in Botswana and Kenya to make schools visible. And it's not because people don't necessarily know that a school is there. They just, at a national level, often don't know exactly where the school is. In Costa Rica, when we did the mapping, in Colombia as well, in Colombia we found about 4,000 schools that didn't exist at the national level, at the national registrar, when we did this type of mapping. And it's important to be able to show what the world is like, to see it in real time. And the basic thesis for our talk, I think, is that we've heard a lot about sort of blended finance and the sleeping trillions. I think if you kick the sleeping trillions, I don't think it moves. The thing is dead. It's not sleeping. There has to be a way to excite finance, to find investment potential, to create capital flow in the parts of this map that are red, to drive innovation and technology at scale. And we have to look at new ways of doing it. And so Giga is really designed to figure out how to excite those capital flows and paint a picture of the world that's a little bit more real-time and a little bit more exciting to investors.
Okay, so we have a very basic model. If you're an investor, I hope we have some investors or funders in the room. Our model of map, model, and contract is essentially taking a piece of risk off every time. So if we can provide information on where the schools are, we can provide information on are those schools currently connected. If we can now provide information on where's the fiber, where's the towers, where's the current coverage, and if we can then also work on innovative contracting and procurement, each one of these things becomes, okay, this investment of connecting every school in this country or across multiple countries becomes maybe a little more interesting. So let's go through really quickly how this model works.
The mapping now is, we're about at 2-some million schools, 2.2 million schools. Nobody in the world knows how many schools there are in the world. You saw the map of Panama with all the green. If you look at Sierra Leone, and again, you can go on your phone and look at this map, but you see a lot less green. Some of it's around Freetown. It costs a lot more to connect a school in Sierra Leone than it does in Panama. When we do the mapping, we help governments see a picture of the world as it really is. In Kyrgyzstan, when we did the mapping for the government, we saw a whole group of schools in the middle of the country, around 100, 200 schools that weren't connected, even though the government thought they had been. Seeing that these schools weren't connected, even though the government had paid for them, we showed it to the Prime Minister, and he said, "What's going on here?" And I said, "I don't know, it's a you problem, not an us problem." He did a rebid, Kyrgyzstan did a rebid of their school connectivity work. By bringing another company in, a third company into this service provision, they lowered the price of connectivity by about 50% in Kyrgyzstan. It saves the Ministry of Education around $250,000 per year, and it allows for a new competitor to come into this market space. So even the mapping by itself starts to have tremendous impacts and effects once you can see what's happening at a national level.
So model, and here's now an example of Zimbabwe where we worked with the regulator, Portraz, and we deployed over the school map, where's the current connectivity, and we did some modeling. And the modeling is meant to help an investor or help an outside party understand what would be the potential technical solutions required. So in the case of Zimbabwe, our work revealed that if you put in where all the fiber is, where all the tower is, that around 50% of the unconnected schools can be connected using a combination of fiber and satellite, which is what we believe the most cost-efficient way. Again, for the UN, for the ITU, we're the neutral, impartial entity. We don't have a favoritism over one technology or other. We're presenting the information, again, to help understand better the problem. And on top of the modeling, we're also introducing what are the policy regulatory levers that need to be in place if someone's going to come in and try to build this network. Regulatory uncertainty, of course, is a huge risk as well. So part of our Giga value proposition is to work with the governments to unblock some of those uncertainties.
So you're a country, government, you've seen the problem. You've then had some help understanding what regulatory levers you could pull or where the financing could come from to start solving that problem. You then try to think about how do you action that, how do you execute it. You do that through a contract, through a public procurement. We also, as Giga, help a government with their procurement documentation. We help provide the data and the facts that they need in order to issue a contract that feels right. So for example, in Rwanda, by helping do some model contracting for the government first, we lowered the price of connectivity there by about 45%. 43% in Rwanda. One of the big problems that we see over and over again is that there are not the small companies that will provide those last mile services to invest in the new types of WISPs, new types of mobile network operators that kind of will be out there at the edge in order to get the investment. We help a government identify how they can elicit those types of bids from these smaller companies. In Brazil, we're helping the government with the procurement of around 25,000 schools. That means 1,100 companies are bidding on that procurement. And so if we can help streamline these three things, as Alex said, the mapping and the infrastructure modeling and the procurement, we reduce the layers of risk tremendously, both for investors outside, but also for governments who want to make a dent on a really tough problem.
So we're currently active in 29 countries. You can see the advanced, intermediate, early. Our first offer to a country is to work with them to start mapping your schools, which requires, of course, the government to be working with us. So it's quite easy to get started. Any governments in the room, please come talk to us if you're not one of the 29. But we want to do more than that, as we demonstrated in the model and the contract.
The goal for next year, the next 18 months, is to bring another 25,000 schools online. We believe that with the capital that Carla mentioned, with this 1.6 billion that's been mobilized, including around 680 million just in Brazil from their Universal Service Fund, and in Kenya with the Universal Access Fund that we're working with there, that this is an achievable goal. We also believe that we can then hit a target of around 10 million students. Now remember that it's a school, so every year more students come in. It's not a number that stops. You kind of keep compounding your gains in a very nice way. But that would bring us to about 15 million students connected. That does not nearly hit the number that Carla mentioned in her opening of being able to connect 1 million young people a day. So we need to go much, much faster. We need to think about our technical support services and how we scale the open source products for monitoring school connectivity, for doing payments for governments, how we scale them much faster. We're in only 30 countries now. There are a lot more countries to access, and there's a lot more learning that we can get from countries about what they're doing at their last mile as well. One of the ways that we're going to start that learning is through our two centers that we're kicking off. The Giga Center in Barcelona builds open source technology. If you or your teams would like to go and work with our engineers, our data scientists on open source platforms, on open data in the public domain, they can come to the center in Barcelona, see what we're doing, share what's happening in your country. So we have some visitors from Sierra Leone coming early in Q1 of next year to share what's happening in Freetown, in their building, and learn from us as well. And that technology center, which Naroa runs, so Naroa, you want to raise your hand? If you have questions about technology, ask her, not us. She'll tell you the truth. We'll make something up. If you want to work on this type of open source technology, that center is up and running, and we'd be delighted to see you or your teams there.
And bringing us back to Geneva, so again, thank you to our the Swiss government who's provided the support to get the headquarters going, and the new center that Carla alluded to is super exciting. And I go back to what I started with. It's now about how can we take this foundation and start scaling. And that's where we have to come out with the innovative contracting, procurement, and financing models, which is why it's perfect that we're here at Building Bridges. And maybe I'll end with this, and that'll be the turnover to our panel. If it hasn't been apparent yet, really this is a universal connectivity play. And we're using the schools as the node. So if we can connect every school with sufficient bandwidth and speed that can then serve the community as a hub and give connectivity to the community, you create universal connectivity and you also create a financing model, because it's not the schools that have to pay for the connectivity, it's got to be the community that uses it. So with that maybe conclusion, we're going to hand over to our panel now to figure out all the answers that we have questions around. So I'm going to invite Karen, who's our moderator, to also call up the panel to begin the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Chris. Great to see the progress of GIGA. A huge congratulations to UNICEF and ITU and the GIGA team and all of the supporters, and thanks again to the Swiss government also for helping make this new center possible. I'm feeling very lonely up here, so before I say any more, I want to invite my shy panel. Actually, they're not shy, but I thought they were going to come up with me. But let me introduce them one by one. So first, they were already introduced by Carla at the beginning, but we have Her Excellency, Dr. Atala Lesbia Molokomi. And apologies if that was not a perfect pronunciation. Your Excellency, we're very delighted to have you here with us. We also have from Kenya, we have James Mwangi. So, and actually, if anyone was very alert during the video, you would notice that Botswana was actually one of the countries profiled in the video. Kenya is also a GIGA country, so delighted to have you here, James, with us. We also have from Switzerland, we have Jonas Pasquier. He's Minister Counselor, Head of Global Affairs at FDFA. And finally, our surprise panel member, we wanted to really have an entrepreneur on the ground. So from Latin America, we have Ivan Ordaz Romo. He's CEO and co-founder of Coco, and he's an entrepreneur really working on that last mile challenge. So we're really happy to have him here with us. So actually, I just wanted to pick up on something that Chris had mentioned. When people talk about innovative finance, you know, everyone's excited about innovative finance. But what a lot of people don't realize that the innovation is not in the finance itself. The innovation is actually in what you do in implementing something that's more efficient or more effective that will actually attract the private sector. That's what innovative financing is. And I was really happy to hear about the developments with GIGA and, you know, particularly, you know, the work that they're doing on mapping and modeling and contracting, and how that's helping to streamline and drive more efficiencies in the system and help make it easier to enhance connectivity to schools. So I think that's really important, and I think that's also something that's very attractive for both public and private sector investors, because it's not just about, you know, throwing more money at an old problem. It's actually investing in new solutions and new ideas. So I think it's really exciting and great to see how far GIGA has come over this time period. So we actually want to have a conversation up here, and we welcome you to be part of that conversation. So please, you know, feel free to jump in. We will have Q&A at the end, but if you have a burning question, I'll try to keep an eye out as well. But let's start with Switzerland, our host. Jonas, you know, we're really delighted to be here, of course, at Building Bridges. It's been a great success. Can you talk a bit more about why Switzerland has been involved in this initiative and sort of Geneva's role in the international community? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you for the organizers for having me here on the panel. I think this initiative is really, we are really excited, and I'm personally very excited about GIGA, because it's quite an embodiment of what we believe is the added value of International Geneva for international governance, but also for concretely for the SDGs. Historically, Geneva has been very has been very active and has brought a contribution both at the normative side, including in terms of telecommunications with ITU, but also in terms of being on the ground and proposing concrete solutions to the most pressing problems. And we see Giga as really the perfect embodiment of this approach. When you have really two giants of international Geneva, like ITU in one field, UNICEF in one another, joining forces, this is the way to go when we see the magnitude of today's challenges. Partnerships and oriented towards concrete solutions that can deliver progress on the ground towards the realization of the SDGs.
And Geneva and the international organizations here have really had a track record in pioneering different innovative financing instruments and really coming together. So it's really the perfect place, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a strong track record, as you say, with regards to innovative financial instruments in the humanitarian sector, for instance. But I think it takes us also to this vision of building bridges, as you alluded to. We are in building bridges, but it goes beyond that. Those sole 4 or 5 days of exchanges. It's about, literally speaking, for those who know Geneva well, it's about building bridges maybe across the Rhone between the international organization on one side and the financial sector on the other side, which would be more the left bank of the river. But it's also about building bridges across sector, and that innovation has been brought about not only by us member states discussing about things, but by opening up to other stakeholders.
Fantastic. And again, it's really great that Switzerland and Geneva will be the home of this new Giga Center, which will really help scale up the great work that's been done so far. So I know you're all eager to hear more concrete examples about Giga and how it's working on the ground. So, Madame Ambassador, I'd like to turn to you next to have you share some of the experiences in Botswana. Thank you. Automatically.
Oh, okay. So I should be careful what I say. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much, moderator, for inviting me. And I have to be the diplomat and thank everybody else, ITU, UNICEF, GIGA, and anyone else who I might not have acknowledged. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm happy to participate and share our modest experience as a country in ensuring universal connectivity across the country, from fully government-led efforts, private-public partnerships, and utilization of the Universal Access Service Fund. You will see from where I began that we see the GIGA initiative and assistance as part of a bigger picture, a bigger ambition that we have as a country to ensure connectivity all around the country. We have a strategy called Smart Bots, BOTS standing for Botswana, which is our digital transformation strategy. It's our value proposition to accelerate digital transformation across the economy. So the idea really is a huge, ambitious one, into which I'm pleased to say the GIGA intervention initiative fits. And we would like to see the partnership with GIGA in the context of the bigger picture. I think some of the the points that were made at the beginning during the introductory remarks by both UNICEF and our two colleagues from GIGA are very relevant to Botswana in the sense that, countries are different. You will have a country that is small with few people or small with lots of people, which is in a way easier to deal with because you can connect cheaply compared to Botswana, which is a huge country, the size of France or Kenya. I think we're the same size as Kenya, but we only have 2.5 million people, and they are spread all over the country. So one of our biggest challenges, if I may already go to the challenges that we face, is exactly that. The cost of connectivity is very high. Our other challenge is that we are categorized as an upper middle income country, so we don't get development aid, we don't get ODA. We are seen as the economy that is doing well, relatively. And so we want to say that much as we may have done quite okay economically, we still do need assistance. And we see that assistance coming in very much in the form of partnerships. And I think the GIGA UNICEF partnership is one such. I can share a little bit more about the rest of the aspects of this project. For us, it's not just about schools. We want to connect 516 villages in Botswana throughout the country. We have 4 phases. So the school connectivity project that we are working with Giga on is part of a much bigger ambition that we have, and I do hope that we can get partners also investing there. Thank you very much.
Great. And coming back to this point about innovation, what, in your view, has been the novelty of Giga and the project on the ground in Botswana?
Well, I think that the novelty for us is that it is so just really focused on schools. And from that point of view, for us, it allows us to focus and put a lot of energy on one aspect and one particular sector, which is education, which for us has been a game changer for our country. And so we think that to be able to, achieve our huge ambition where we want to have a whole of government approach, for us, this is the novelty. I don't know whether other countries are doing this, I'm sure they are, but we think for us it's new because we have tended to operate very much in silos, different sectors, different ministries operating separately. So this allows us, therefore, to look at connectivity in that holistic way, where we want to improve the quality of life of our people everywhere. Not only the children in the school, then they go home, and there's this big gap between home and school. So this is where really I believe our cooperation with Giga, or collaboration with Giga, is going to make a difference, not only to the children, to the school, but also to the country.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'd like to transition now and focus a bit more on the financing aspect. So we talked a little bit about innovative finance, blended finance, which is really the de-risking, using public money to de-risk private sector to come into areas they wouldn't normally come into. Impact investing is where investors are looking to have an impact, plus hopefully some kind of financial return. But also there's been a lot of talk here the last couple of days about results-based financing. We had a session yesterday on impact-linked financing, and actually there was a session this morning on outcomes-based financing for education, very timely for this panel as well. But here we have an expert in James, CEO of Equity Bank. So James, we'd love to hear a bit more from you and your insights about successful models of blending public and private financing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me add my voice in recognizing and appreciating what UNICEF has done in picking such an impactful project that has an enormous return in value, in the sense that we are investing in young people and reaping the benefits for the rest of their lives. The second aspect is on financing. Education has become very central in distributing opportunities. If you get access to education, the same happens in increasing your chances of getting opportunities in life, whether it's of employment, whether it's self-employment, or making a living. Now, Equity, having recognized that, chose to look at this area in 3 buckets. The first one is private education. With private education, it was very easy. It was bundling school connectivity with the school financing. So it becomes part of the component. So as you finance the school, you finance connectivity and spread out the repayment. That has seen us finance approximately 2,000 schools that have pushed connectivity. Connectivity goes beyond connecting schools. It goes to connecting the student, because if the student don't have devices and you have connected the school, you still have not delivered. So essentially, we ended up looking at the second component of supporting parents to provide their children with digital devices that allows them to connectivity. And that became very easy because it's part of the school fees every term. We've had about 700,000 parents every beginning of the term, and that component then is loaded in the loans to the parents. And then there is a component of Equity Group Foundation. There are those who will not be able to be funded by their parents, and we have worked very closely with MasterCard Foundation, with IFC and World Bank to create a scholarship program. Now, this scholarship program has become an integrated holistic scholarship that involves giving the child the device and paying for access in terms of the BADO. So that then gives particularly the orphans, and we have 60,000 kids who are in school benefiting from this. We recognized the change in education. If it is the way education is delivered, then you must incorporate these as a mechanism. And that we then, out of the bruise, out of the foundation, we thought of planting 35 million trees. And we realized with the 60,000 kids in 2,000 schools, we could use those kids to plant trees initially in the schools. But as we planted the schools, planted trees in the schools, we realized schools were cutting as many trees as we were planting because their kitchens were using wood fuel. And then we realized, then we asked the ministry to do a baseline survey, and we realized the country, 12,000 schools were cutting almost 12 million trees in a year to fuel. And we said, let's compute the cost of learning a wood energy kitchen, an LPG kitchen. And we realized that we could reduce the cost of operation of a kitchen by 40%. And we told the government that you don't need to fund these. The saving will be sufficient to fund the transformation and transition of the kitchen. And to date, 1,000 schools have already been converted, and from the savings, they are able to pay the cost of transition between 8 and 12 months. So there are mechanisms we can look at the public schools and say, how is the current structure? Will the transition, because it's a transition in the way we deliver education, create opportunities for us to review the structure, see whether there will be savings, and then that can be used as a cash flow for lending to finance digital access. Thank you.
Wow, I just love so many things about that. First of all, the fact that this goes way beyond the impact on the schools. It's obviously the impact on the students, and not just the current ones, but year after year, there's a multiplier effect there. And then, as you're saying, on the parents, and then on the communities and the villages, and really on so many levels. Also, you talked about blended finance. You know, the different kinds of players that have been coming in Kenya and helping to support from different sides. Can you talk a little bit about what you see as some of the challenges or opportunities for making all of this sustainable in the longer term?
Thank you very much. And it's good you have expanded this. At the household level and community level, we developed an energy program of providing households with energy, solar panels, clean energy devices. Essentially, we not only now have the device with the child, but we have the mechanism of charging that through solar panels. We have provided 686,000 households with clean energy devices, principally solar panels. So you complete the entire end-to-end. Now, what are the challenges? There are many challenges along the way. The first one is shocks that households and communities constantly receive from economic shocks. And there is where you need partners, particularly philanthropies, to come and help de-risk the projects. So we have a credit guarantee that supports these facilities from MasterCard Foundation and says, let's fine, but there is a credit risk sharing guarantee. So that then we realized we can scale this commercially and went for commercial guarantees. So, and that is how we were able to do things in very huge scale. So that is one of, yes, there's a huge challenge here, but there are mechanisms. The second, of course, is the quality of education. Where the quality of education is not good, then people don't appreciate the return on the investment. If this would help improve the quality and outcomes, then people are willing to invest. But if they can't see improvement in quality, outcomes, then you have a debate with the people. Why are we doing this and we are not seeing improvement in education? So that is another big challenge. And lastly, is the bureaucracy of discussing with governments. I wish government was a one-stop office that you go and discuss. Then you hear there is an interministerial discussion to be had. That and the challenge there is prolonging the period it takes. So it requires a lot of patience and tolerance for the process to go through. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's another part of the power of GIGA, because it's really streamlining the process around this and helping to educate governments and helping them to see actually how to move faster in this area. Also, very important point that you made about the people that people and investors in the community can see better outcomes, and that it's a virtuous cycle and not a vicious cycle, that when they're investing, that things are getting in all of the communities. It starts with the schools and the students and the households and all of the direct and indirect outcomes. And finally, I think another very important point you mentioned, you know, it starts often with foundation money or grants, public or private grants, and then maybe the impact investors come in. But when these things are working, as these examples have shown so far, then commercial investors start coming in, and then you have long-term sustainability, which is great. And then you can really scale up as well.
And even before commercial money comes in, if you prove concept and you have the right governance, there are a lot of people who want to do good, but they don't know how. Yeah. They come on board to scale. They say, we have heard you are doing this, can we be part of it? So you can lead a scale if you get it right.
Absolutely. Great. So now it would be terrific to hear from Ivan, to hear from an entrepreneur who's on the ground trying to do the hard job of connecting the last mile. We heard from Chris that procurement is part of the GIGA initiative and making it easier to procure from entrepreneurs like you on the ground. But could you start by sharing some of your experiences and learnings from working on that last mile connectivity? Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So from our perspective, just to put everyone here on the same channel, in Mexico, there's more than 12 million people unconnected, part of the 2.6 billion around the world that we just saw. And the three biggest challenges that cause that gap, not only in Mexico, but also its pattern recognition all across the world, is that there's three: access, affordability, access, affordability, and adoption. With access, the three big challenges are that internet equals coverage. So for there to be coverage, there needs to be infrastructure, and that investment, it's usually not done either by whichever company is doing that investment. It's usually not very profitable in rural communities. So let's say a mobile company, usual cost for a cell tower is around $50,000. So if you take a cell tower of $50,000 to a rural community, there's going to be a very hard sell on the return on the investment to get the investors and that company to invest and bring the connectivity. So that's why we see this gap. They look for communities of at least 5,000 people for them to be able to invest. So that's why initiatives like GIGA are a great opportunity, because they are the ones bringing that connectivity and doing that initial investment. Second and third challenges, which were affordability and access, it's just affordability. It's people, most of the times, I mean, we all have phones here, and you have a credit card, you have the capacity to pay. This is not the reality in rural communities. People in rural communities don't have a credit card, don't have probably the enough capital to pay for the current data plans. And third, it's a new tool. Accessibility, when you're talking about a new tool, especially as weird as the internet, imagine if it's the first time you're coming across this device, how do you use it? What do you get out of it? So all of these aspects are part of the barriers that are keeping 2.6 billion unconnected. The opportunities, though, really quick, is just imagine, for example, this quick exercise. If you're a bank and you have 1,000 paying customers in your bank, imagine that if I told you that across the street, there's other 1,000 customers willing to pay, that want your service. Only thing you need to do is bring your bank and open a new location in that street. 6 out of every 10 people living in rural Latam already own a smartphone. So they're ready to use the internet, they need the internet, and they know how to use it. The problem is that we need to bring the coverage to that kind of communities and that kind of locations. That's what we have been focusing on for the past couple of years. We validated, which is a great thing. Our thesis is that it is profitable and it is sustainable to invest in these rural communities because they already own the smartphones, they know how to use the internet, we just need to make those investments, and yeah, pretty much.
Great. Can you talk about some of the key stakeholders that are engaging with you and that have helped to facilitate the work that you and others are doing?
If you want to look at it in layers, there's the big players always, the big telco companies all around the world. They pretty much, you could say, own the biggest brands out there. Then there's the middle tier players. They are usually local companies, but already established local companies. And there's at the bottom of the pyramid, in this case, startups like mine, that we are doing the last mile for this kind of connections. Fortunate enough, we've encountered a good group of organizations. In the past, we've worked with Facebook, with Google, all the big players out there, right? So I would say right now the offer on the software or on the hardware side, it's enough. There are already enough efforts made by the big companies to help the lower end of the pyramid, the small players, which are actually the ones that can close the digital gap. If you zoom in most countries right now, to see the connectivity landscape, you're going to find small local players, usually local entrepreneurs, that they are already doing something in connectivity space. We just need to empower them to give them access to capital, because that is the last mile, the last piece of the puzzle right now that I would say is missing. And yeah, that pretty much I could say it's not something it sounds very simple, right? But that is right now the last piece of the puzzle we're missing.
And speaking of access to capital, you've had direct experience in this area. Can you talk about some of the kind of financing instruments that have been important in your work?
Yeah. Usually the capital likes to invest in the things they already know or the things they've already proven. So that meaning for the big telcos, they already have access to all the capital they need. It's just that they prefer to keep on investing in Geneva instead of bringing the connectivity to other places. For us, the challenge has been trying to convince the capital right now, because the problem is that there's not really a lot of tools or there's not a lot of mechanisms to get access to that funding, because there's the common belief that it's still too risky. So we don't have access to maybe we don't need 10 million right now or 20 million, but at least the couple starting millions that could get us started expanding our model. The problem is that it's still the taboo of it being a big challenge, it being a big risk. So the interest rates that we get access to are in the 30, 45% interest rate for loans. That is, if you get access to those loans. So we have had the opportunity, thanks to a couple investors that decided to trust in us, to be to get access to capital. But the reality is that for the small players that I'm telling you about, that are the ones that can start closing the digital gap the fastest, for them there's still not a lot of mechanisms and not a lot of tools to make use to close that digital divide and get the funding.
And actually, I would say there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of mechanisms, but in many countries, in developed and developing countries in particular, we're missing the kind of intermediaries that can help connect the supply and demand and also help sort of translate how you can use the tools that are out there. So again, you know, I think Giga is playing and will play a very important role in this area, particularly with the Geneva Center. Madame Ambassador, I wanted to come back to you. How have you been able, or how has Botswana been able to unlock resources in the country in this area?
Well, I'm not sure we have. Look, resources are never in adequate supply. I mean, otherwise, I guess we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I think the important lesson to learn from my country is that the government considers itself primarily responsible for investing in the welfare of the people. So much as we don't have a lot of resources, our education, our budget, expenditure on education and health in particular is a big priority. The government puts many resources there. So I would say the lesson to learn in terms of unlocking resources is that charity begins at home. You yourself, no matter how small, how not very rich, how poor you may be, if you demonstrate that you are ready to put your money where your mouth is, I think partners will come. And I do think that Giga did see, UNICEF and other partners did see that, and we do have examples in other sectors, not just here in the connectivity space or in the digital space, where we demonstrate that much as we are a upper middle income country, we still have pockets of poverty, we have challenges, but we are trying our best to deal. So in our national budget, we try to distribute the resources in such a way that we focus on uplifting the socioeconomic status of the people. So that is one way of unlocking. So the little money you have, you put it in the right places. So for example, if I give you, maybe I can give you some of the figures. By the time Giga came in, we had already begun investing in our own. So when Giga comes, and we can then extend a hand again to Giga and say, look, we've gone here, we've expanded there, and we want to be sure that maybe you can assist us a little bit more. And they have been forthcoming, I must say. So for phase 2 and 3, we are looking forward to a pledge. We have received a pledge, and we'll begin. So these things are incremental, but as I say, it has to start with you. Let me just quickly also say that one of the things that we have also learned is you spoke, James, Mr. Mwangi, about bureaucracy. This is something I think generally we as governments know well, and I think we know the limitations. We know that it slows things down. One of the things we've done in Botswana is that we have, as a government, decided that after the budget has been agreed for the different ministries, we then we take from each ministry whatever has been allocated for this kind of digital connectivity, and we centralize it in a project, this SmartBots project I told you about, at the office of the president. Now, guess what happens then? I think you said you met our president before. I think you've been on panels before. He's very, very ambitious about this particular area of digitization. And he said, I want to see things happen. So if it's in his office, what is then happening is that money needs to get spent, and it needs to get spent in the places that it should be spent. So the ministries can focus on what they do best, and at the office of the president, he has a team that ensures that whatever little resources have been taken from the other ministers that have been centralized, the procurement is pooled, and I can tell you we've had lots of savings in this regard in Botswana. We are not there, but we are trying our best, and we are trying to respond to many of the challenges that we are facing.
Terrific. Thank you so much. James, I wanted to come back to you. What, in your view, will it take to scale and replicate Giga globally?
Thank you very much. I think what will lead it take is rethinking how we deliver education, because it's like digitalizing systems that were designed for a manual environment. So if we rethink education, such that we don't layer digitization of schools on top of the old education model, but we design a new model, then it will happen. Because essentially, it will be just part of school financing. But until that happens, if you look at GIGA is taken as an additional project in addition to education. We have not disrupted the cost structure, the funding structure of education. Yet, we have disrupted the way we deliver education. So the two needs to be harmonized.
Absolutely, and as someone who does a lot of teaching, and when COVID came, we had to very quickly learn how to start using tools we didn't use before, and it really does change, and this will require a change in educational systems. Jonas, would you like to come back in on this topic of scaling and replicating?
Well, not necessarily on the technicalities of it, since the expertise is elsewhere in this room on that regard, but I think a very telling aspect of this initiative is also how you move the pieces a little bit together, but also with this multiplying effect. When we had the opportunity to get engaged with UNICEF and ITU on the opportunities to have GIGA having their headquarters in Geneva, there was nothing of the like in terms of, I think maybe they had somewhere hidden in their minds already, Chris and Alex had already the roadmap in their, under their desk, but with us, we saw more an idea, we saw also the importance of being the first movers, and I think either on the side of the host country, but also on the side of the beneficiary country, there's certainly also this opportunity to be the first mover, and certainly also as far as the private sector is concerned. And we really saw this dynamic playing almost under our eyes and continue to be played along this direction. And I think this is what makes this initiative particularly exciting.
Fantastic. Well, I know there are probably a lot of questions out there in the audience, so and already one, okay. So I'm going to open up to questions, and I'm going to take all of, or at least groups of questions together before coming back to the panelists. So I saw your hand first, and then this lady in the middle here, and you can use your mic. Go ahead. Please just quickly say your name, and please make a short give a short question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Before I raise my question to maybe Alex, who can reply to my question and share the reflection, which will be useful for our session, let me share, first of all, that we are here in building bridges thanks to the international call have been adopted by all state members since 10 years ago. Since then, we are here when we mentioned sustainable finance. And as I hear already about digital device, and with this process, information society process, in that time, we founded also the Digital Solidarity Fund, which is a very fabulous story because it is, money still exists and it is the process still going on to establish once again this process, the fund having again, because United Nations International Childhood Emergency Fund. This is UNICEF. Among all the other UN agencies, UNICEF, it is also dealing also with bilateralism, which means there is more than 150 offices. I'm coming, Karen, please. No, because I appreciate the intervention of Her Excellency Ambassador of Botswana, and we can learn many things from Botswana, how and why. Yes, LDC's process, because during the Congress of the United Nations in 2011, when Botswana getting out from LDC's process, this time it used to be already the process coming out for education as an instrument for development. And in that time, another process have been established in ITU, the LDCCs, Least Development Countries Connected. Now, I should terminate, please, because during the first edition of Building Bridges, we got also the governor of Central Bank of Kenya. And this is what I mentioned yesterday. During my intervention, it has been confirmed also by the former European Union.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should raise my question, please. About the multilateral development banks, cooperations, and about GIGA, because GIGA, it cannot be comparable with others programs have been established in IFRC, Red Cross, it is a disaster context, but the question for Alex, yes, because I'm dealing also with another NGO's early childhood childhood protection.
Thank you.
The question it is, you are dealing with public sector, private sector in those countries who are less connected, more connected.
Thank
How
you.
you are dealing with that
So there will
context.
be a chance. I believe that Alex and Chris are coming up, and I should have said that before, sorry. They'll come up after this panel again, I believe, and there can still be some clarifying questions. So thank you. You have a long experience here in Geneva. You've been involved in a lot of these processes. Thank you very much. The lady in the middle there, thank you. And please, short questions. Thank you.
Am I audible? Yeah. I'm a student. I'm a second-year student in economics master's, and my question is, I think, very direct and simple. When we talk about universal school connectivity, it's also about universal access to schooling, right? So there are a lot of students or a lot of children who are not students, and I think, at least from what we've seen in the pandemic, technology can play a crucial role in distance learning and education. So can GIGA play a role in this, or are they willing to play a role in this, and how would that be mapped out?
Great, thank you. Here.
I'm Adrian Schatzmann from the Asset Management Association here in Switzerland. Our industry, we manage assets on behalf of our clients. It's not our assets. And typically our clients, they come to us and ask, how can I make money? And listening to the very interesting panel discussion now, I still have an open question. How can I make money by investing in GIGA?
Okay, other questions? Yes.
Yes, my name is Italo Osueta. I am an association manager. I have actually a question on how GIGA is envisaging to develop more partnership with other international organizations, probably based in Geneva. As when we think about schools, we think about education of children, but it also involves adults, and it also involves a lot of other groups of population, depending on the reality of each country, refugees, or it can be a center for health development or awareness, etc. Even for democracy, many people in developing countries go to vote to schools or go to find solutions for health issues. So I see a lot of potential for GIGA to develop partnership in Geneva. I mean, we have UNHCR, not far from here. We have many other international organizations dealing with health matters as well. How are you envisaging to develop that partnership to achieve the goal of having full connectivity in those places? Schools, not as a place for education, but as a place for to deliver community services in developing countries.
Great, thank you so much. And I think that just highlights the importance that GIGA is actually headquartered here in Geneva, because there are a lot of synergies. So actually, Chris and Alex, I do invite you to help answer some questions, but let me turn to the panel first. James, why would investors be interested in GIGA?
I think investors need to be given as he has asked, a reason to invest. And ideally, investors have 3 items they look for. There is return, there is impact, and ideally what is extremely clear at the moment is impact. We know the social impact GIGA has in advancing education, in meeting the strategic development goal on access to education. It will contribute to poverty. There you can't dispute the significant impact. But somebody who is looking for a market return, I think they need to be given a way. But I think that question is best answered by Alex, because we would be pretending to be answering on behalf of GIGA, and as you said, he will be coming on in front.
Yeah, and so maybe I'll let you guys clean up at the end of the round. So certainly the social impact is clear, but also when you're talking about more efficiency, more effectiveness, systemic change that GIGA is leading to, I have to believe that there's also a quantifiable financial return within that as well. So I hope that Giga will be looking at both aspects. And you were saying already in Kenya that the commercial investors are coming in. So it is a matter of sort of getting things started with the initial investments. So maybe the commercial investors might not come in the first round, but once they see that the risk is reduced, there's a proven track record, there's more efficiency, there's more effectiveness, then it could potentially be more attractive. But again, Alex and Chris, I'll let you come in a minute. Madame Ambassador, did you want to add anything on this point or some of the other questions that were raised, or anyone else on the panel, if you would like to address this or some of the other comments or questions? Otherwise, Alex, Chris, you're up.
Let me wait and collect a few
Ivan?
comments and thoughts.
Well, just to add real quick, if you are looking at an investment from the financial perspective, telecom, it's an asset class similar to any other infrastructures, that it has great returns on investment. You have users with a lifetime value of over 10 years. So this is an asset class that usually we think, if you're an investor, that is the telco's responsibility to keep on investing. Part of the effort that we need to do is to make sure that there are vehicles that drive your investment to our industry, either by issuing bonds or new creative ways to co-invest, so that way we can attract your investments. To give you quick examples about, for example, from the private sector, what companies have done, Intel, for example, in certain parts of the world, they know that the more people that are connected, it eventually ends up impacting their revenue and the sales of their devices, because most devices will run on Intel. So from different perspectives, either private or public, or in this case from the investment sector, there's sufficient information. We just need to make sure we provide a good case for you to know the return on your investment without mentioning the impact, right? Giga is more on the impact side. They know that the humanity needs to educate our children, and that alone, it's just the reason to invest. But if you want for fact good returns on investment, there's also a lot of great arguments there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's going to be important to be able to demonstrate on both sides. So Chris, Alex, would either of you like to come in at this point? Otherwise, I'll open up to a few more questions if there are some in the room. There's a negotiation between the two.
No, I was going to think, why don't we, because Chris and I are going to take the stage for the next step.
Okay,
so we
yeah,
can maybe
let's do
address
that.
a couple
That'd
of the
be great.
comments. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay,
we
another
promise
question.
we'll answer all the questions that we can. So.
Okay, terrific. Okay, they need more time, in other words. All right, I get it. Yes.
Hi, my name is Pia. I have a question. I think I know more or less how Giga works and their ambitions and what the challenge is. I mean, we're all here because we know that connectivity is a challenge. And just taking the advantage that we have Madame Ambassador there and Ivan from the sort of entrepreneurship world, I'm just curious from both sides, public and private, what are the challenges that you see in order to get from where you are, working with the public sector or with the private sector, that would help? So for example, I imagine, on the private sector you might need, I don't know, clear regulations, or seed capital, or what would you need in order to get us closer to that? And from the public sector, I would say, what do you need to see to be sure that the sort of investment from the private sector, from the entrepreneurs, is there? Thanks.
All right, great. So that will be our last question. They're a little worried. I've been in Switzerland a long time, so I was going to stick exactly to time. But we'll give Chris and Alex a bit more time to answer all their questions. So yes, Madame Ambassador. Yes.
Just quickly, I thought I obviously cannot answer all the finance-related questions. I'm not a finance and investment specialist, but I'm sure that there are many indirect benefits that investors as citizens of the world can see in putting their resources and investing, especially those who operate in our part of the world, you know, where we see them as partners in development. I think that we do have some very good examples, certainly in my country, of corporations and companies and investors who are active in our space, who are getting a good return, and who are also investing together with government in different projects, including projects of this sort. But I thought I'd say something in response to someone who asked earlier about what about the children who are not in school. I think this is the question. In those countries where access to education, access to school is not guaranteed, and how do you reach those children who are not in school? I think it's a very good question. It's an important concern. That is why in Botswana, as I explained earlier, we look at the whole country. So we're not focusing only on the learners and the students and the teachers, because we do provide, in some cases, gadgets, mobile devices for learners and students, but we have the village connectivity, and we are looking also around, and we are getting some interest from local investors in enhancing connectivity and getting gadgets for children and their parents who are not in school, but who are in need of this assistance. I thought I'd just throw that.
Great, thank you. And with that, unfortunately, we are out of time. I know there's a lot more to discuss with the panel, but thank you so much for being here with us. And I'll turn back over to Chris and Alex. Thank you.
Okay, so we thought the panel was going to answer that question, but let's. Oh, sorry, Your Excellency. So we'll just take a minute to try to address a couple of the questions, but also show you what we're planning next. And actually, we'll show you what's planning next, and then we'll maybe address the questions that were asked. No, well, okay, we can sit. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So the next steps, just to show you what we're planning. I mean, our goal is not Giga personally, but for us to have catalyzed that we can connect every school by 2030 to the internet. Going through the intermediate milestones, I don't know, Chris, do you want to cover those, or you want me to keep going? Okay, so, and then we'll address this question that was asked, a couple of questions that were asked. So we want to continue mapping, and we think there's 6 to 7 million schools. That's almost like the easy part, right? I mean, I don't mean that, I mean, showing where those schools are. So we want to get to hopefully mapping most of the schools, if not all of them, by 2025. And then we want to be, in parallel, working with our partner countries to strengthen the regulatory framework. Again, I referred earlier about if we're trying to attract capital that needs to make a return, we're starting to chip away at the puzzle of taking off some of the information gaps and the risks. Maybe I will turn to Chris about the $1 billion in capital, because we know that this is only going to work if we can get money that is looking for a good return. This can only be working through a blended finance mechanism. So maybe, Chris, I will hand over to let you cover those 2 points next. Super.
So thanks, Alex, and thank you to the panel. I mean, I think Ambassador and Jonas, Ivan, and James, it was really, I think you gave a much better presentation of why connectivity is important than we ever could have, and why this is such an important partnership to Switzerland as well. We believe, to the point about the sleeping trillions or the dead trillions and this question of what's financeable, it's not that I don't think anybody wants to invest in Giga itself, right? And that's not the thing, but the products that come out of our work, I think, are very much investable indeed. We have a plan this year to set up the beginnings of a capital product, a capital fund or set of funds that allow for investments to be made at market returns into emerging markets, into telecoms infrastructure. As we heard from Ivan, there are opportunities there. They're just often too small. So it's hard for a company right now, sort of one of these innovative telecoms companies at the edge of what's going on, to take more than $5 million or $10 million in. They're just not set up for it. And there's not a lot of project to invest in at that size. So we believe there's a role for us with the type of data that we're gathering, the regulatory insights we have from governments, and the environment that we see in front of us, to start putting those types of deals together for investors and for private capital. We also think that there's a big space for de-risking and the benefit of working with ITU and UNICEF, even if the fund isn't directly inside of the UN. And in fact, the UN can't hold that type of equity anyway. Still, the relationship with these two agencies and with the knowledge that they have will provide substantial de-risking for investors. So we're really looking forward to putting together the first part of that capital stack. But we do believe that we need to be able to allocate as well over the coming years, rather than just helping to kind of aggregate the demand and help others put money into places, because we think that in markets like Botswana, there is absolutely an investable surface. It's just not easy to see from outside. The last piece that I'd say is that the types of products that we're developing in Barcelona, these open source tech products, are also companies that my background's in VC and early stage, I look at them and I see them as things that I would want to put money into. These are products that help to monitor connectivity or help to understand how to do payments at a national level for public infrastructure. These are GovTech products. These are things that are using some of the most sophisticated machine learning and blockchain technology to help drive results in emerging markets. And so I think you'll see, if you look at the Barcelona portfolio, a set of ventures that are coming out that are also investable at an early stage. Do you want to talk about that next?
So let me I'll take a crack at these last two comments. I mean, we don't have the answers, but we have a lot of ideas. So to further go about how to make this thing investable, so blended finance, if we can start with $1 billion in capital as grant capital or concessional capital, that doesn't hurt. You have a pretty good war chest to begin. Can we figure out and do an indicative country and really show the model working at a decent-sized country that other investors can see, this actually can generate a return? We did work 2 years ago with Boston Consulting Group where we had them actually assess how can we finance school connectivity using the community. The report's on our GIGA website. They concluded that both using CapEx and OpEx, around 87% of the capital can be funded through market mechanisms if you're able to combine. This is like a rural village in a developing country. If you're able to look at introducing the energy equation into that, if you can piggyback onto selling energy to the villagers as well as the connectivity, if you're willing to innovate and think about advertising, maybe, maybe not, but you slowly chip away. So 87% isn't 100%, but, and of course, as the ambassador, Your Excellency, you mentioned, drawing on the Universal Service Fund, so the additional sources of local capital. And then Chris and I have been talking about, digital money is next door, but we thought, if you can create innovative financing models that attract the retail market, who might want to pay for the connectivity that their child's going to get in their school, maybe only a few dollars, but these are all incomes that could be added to the balance sheet of the investment. But we're not there yet, and we know it's a very competitive. So part of the opening of the center and looking at the financing is how can we look at these different options to sort of chip away so that eventually this becomes an investable consideration for the investors out there. And then the comment about working with other IOs, actually, if we can share that, we're discussing with the African CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the WHO about connecting health centers, because that's just another dot on the map. And by doing that, using the same approach, you now also increase the potential investable returns. So we are looking at, with WHO, for example, and the Africa CDC on how can we use the same approach to connecting health centers or any public institutions for that matter. Do you want to add anything, Chris, before we?
I mean, I think so being in Geneva is great for that. It's also, you have UNHCR. The technology that we've developed for mapping schools works equally well to map schools in refugee camps or with displaced persons camps. The type of building that we look at, like the machine learning finds a school from space, it can find a post office, it can find a health center. So these are things that we're really excited to be rolling out, and I think without the support of the Swiss and Spanish governments, we wouldn't be able to do that, certainly not at scale and with the type of partners that we need to make a dent, because as we heard from Carla in the beginning, 1 million kids per day is a really, really big number, and we're going to have to move much faster than any one agency can do by itself, and even the two of us together are nowhere near making a dent on a problem this big unless we have help from everybody else. So thank you very much again, and we'll turn over to Alex.
Yes, I'll introduce our closing remarks from Doreen Bogdan, Secretary General of the ITU. So Doreen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased that I was able to at least join part of this session. I do hope if you were not GIGA believers before, that you are now GIGA believers. I just came back from the General Assembly, last week. For those of you that followed a bit of the General Assembly, I think it's fair to say that digital was in focus almost everywhere you went, whether it was cybersecurity, artificial intelligence. I think digital was the talk of the town, and digital was also a big focus in terms of how to get the SDGs back on track and I think the UNSG has been quite clear. We've been looking for a rescue solution for the SDGs. We believe digital technologies are that rescue solution. We launched a report that showed that with digital solutions, you can actually accelerate progress on 80% of your SDG targets. But specifically, we focused on Giga, and of course for us, Giga is a solution to get the SDGs back on track. We do work with numerous partners, as both Alex and Chris have just mentioned. With UNHCR, we have a joint commitment on refugee connectivity. Of course, we work closely with UNESCO. We're excited to ramp up that partnership in the context of the TESS outcomes. And I would also add here, next year, the theme that the African Union has chosen for 2024 is education. So I hope that next year is Giga's moment in Africa. Ambassador, I hope you can help us, not just in Botswana, but with all your neighbors and all your friends, because we believe that Giga can make a huge difference. In New York, we featured, as I said, Giga as a solution. We had with us the minister from Sierra Leone, which is another Giga partner. And she explained to us that they have some 11,000 schools in Sierra Leone. And I think, Chris, 200 of them are connected, only 200 out of 11,000 schools. And at the same time, 3G and 4G coverage is almost there in the whole of the country. And this goes back to some of the points I heard when I came in. This is not a coverage issue. That we can do this. We need to have the right financial models and solutions. We have seen from the minister from Sierra Leone something like 13 to 14% increase of GDP expected if we can get these schools connected. And of course, it's not just about connecting the schools, it's about connecting the communities and these schools being used as a hub for the community. So be it skilling, be it reskilling, be it, of course, education and other applications from agriculture to support to SMEs and MSMEs, et cetera. So we're excited, and I think it's through partnerships. I think we have the right mix in this room to help us get to the next level, but we firmly believe that that Giga can get us there so that we can connect every school in the world and bring opportunity and choice to every young person out there. So thanks again. And Alex, was there anything I was supposed to say that I didn't say? Okay. But I would say one more thing that we do need. I mean, you've been talking about funding, and the funding gap is big. The funding gap needs all of us. Our estimates are over 400-something billion, because it's not just the connection to the school, it's all the other things that come with it. The devices, the service cost, the applications, the multilingualism, the local content, and so we count on all of you to help us get it done. We may not have all the answers, but we've seen in our Giga countries that this is the way that we can advance in terms of bringing educational opportunities and choice to everyone, everywhere. Thank you.